may have seen that the internet's target at the time of making this video is Snoop D-O-double-G, and you may be wondering why, so let's just set the scene. A podcast called It's Giving Podcast put out an interview with Snoop Dogg, and this podcast prides itself on raw, open, and transparent conversations. So let's see the raw, open, and transparent conversation that they were having.
Back to the presentation I spoke to you earlier. What you see is what you see. They putting it everywhere.
Yeah.
I took my grandson to see, what was the movie with Buzz Lightyear?
Toy Story?
They're talking about Lightyear. Why 3 years after the movie's release is anyone's guess. Pardon me for talking in the middle of this clip. I'm going to be doing that quite a bit. While I am making this with fair use rights, given that this video is speaking critically of not just a public figure, but someone who has a podcast on the same platform that I share, I'm going to play the safe route here. Also, the fact that he doesn't know what movie it is going to play a fair amount into what I have to say about the situation.
Keke Palmer's in that movie.
Okay.
She plays like the daughter. So we watching it, and the lady, which is Keke's mama, they move on into the space years. They move down the line. They're like, man, she had a baby with a woman. Well, my grandson in the middle of the movie like, Papa Snoop, how she have a baby with a woman? She a woman. Oh, shit.
Here we go again.
So this is the sort of crux of what everyone is scratching their heads about, to put it lightly. But for those who haven't seen Lightyear, it is a spin-off of Toy Story, and the plot of it is that Buzz Lightyear and crew are marooned on a hostile planet. Part of the beginning of this movie is Buzz Lightyear traveling through this time warp contraption in an attempt to reach hyperspace so that they can leave, but he fails each time. But getting so close to said hyperspace due to time dilation, way more time passes for the marooned crew than Buzz. Point being that his best friend, Commander Hawthorne, or Alicia Hawthorne, whom he was close in age to, ends up drifting apart in age to the point of death. For the record, Keke Palmer plays the character Izzy Hawthorne, who we don't see until technically about 23 minutes in, and she's actually the granddaughter to Alicia Hawthorne, who Snoop Dogg erroneously called the mother of Izzy. But the bigger point is that Snoop Dogg was confused on how the two women could have a child.
I didn't come in for this shit. I just came to watch the goddamn movie. Hey, man, watch the movie. They just said she had a baby. They both women's. How did she have a baby?
Now, while originally I was gonna clown him for not saying adoption, which is a valid way for two women to have a child, what's important about the context here is that shortly before seeing Alicia and her wife Kiko with their kid, we see that Alicia is pregnant, which for Disney and Pixar is incredibly rare, and I don't think I have any example of something like this happening before. And it is logical for a child to ask how it's possible for her to be pregnant if she has a wife. Now, because Snoop said he took the kids to see Lightyear, I'm going to assume that this question was asked in the context of them being in a movie theater. And if so, I can at least understand not wanting to have a full-out conversation there. But the issue at hand is that Snoop doesn't seem to want to have the conversation at all.
So it's like, fuck me, I'm scared to go to the movies now. Like, y'all throwing me in the middle of shit that I don't have an answer for.
What'd you tell him?
Watch the movie. It's just popcorn.
You said we don't know. We don't know.
Even without getting into the nitty-gritty, how harmful is it to say that Kiko and Alicia wanted to be a family and got help, or that families come in all forms, both of which are true? Meanwhile, the host of the podcast is just keying away. Pun intended. What I personally find funny is that the host of the podcast, who's branding her podcast as raw, open, transparent, self-aware, and all the like, apparently mistakenly edited this segment out of the full podcast interview, but repackaged it as a short. Now, as you can clearly see, I have this segment of the interview in its original 16:9 format, which means that somewhere this was posted. And I can't verify if it was originally taken from this video, but my question is, how did the one moment that went viral get mistakenly cut? With captions baked onto the video, this was posted somewhere that provides captioning, and while I'm pretty sure it's YouTube-style captions, that's only speculation. But even without guessing, she had the raw footage before anyone else did. I highly doubt this was a leak. What I'm trying to say is this is doubly ugly. One, for laughing and cheering on what could have been a raw, open, and healing conversation for those who are marginalized, and two, for trying to edit it out before you get the backlash, but then repost it once you see it's going viral and say that it's mistakenly edited, which is the opposite of a raw, open, and transparent conversation. It's giving bigotry.
It threw me for a loop. I'm like, what part of the movie was this? These are kids that we have to show that at this age. Like,
That part.
they're going to ask questions.
Yeah.
They are going to ask. I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Hey man, look, kids are curious and look to adults to guide them through the unknowns of our world. The questions are completely okay. It's the answers that can really be backwards. Now look, one counter argument could be, why does a grandparent have to have this conversation with their grandkid? And I understand that. If he has parents, his parents have the right to have this kind of conversation with their child. But if you're gonna go to a podcast and talk about it and your conclusion was just to shut the kid up and never talk about it, then question why Pixar would ever touch the subject in the first place, then the counter argument is moot, because it was never about the kid. It was about Snoop being an influential figure and peddling a backwards mindset about being afraid of kids' movies that show a same-sex couple with a child. This is the same man who stood next to Suge Knight. Suge Knight! I can't even tell you what he did because I'm more afraid of him than I am of Kiko. As much as I'd like to wave it off and ask who is going to Snoop Dogg of all people for cartoon takes, a lot of people respect him enough to believe his distortion of the movie. The entirety of this scene takes about 15 seconds at most and is painted to be a significant part of the movie, but the purpose of the scene was only to indicate that Commander Hawthorne had the opposite view of Buzz. She felt like it was better to get settled into their new home rather than waste the time they could be spending with others. Could that have been achieved with a typical nuclear family with conventional gender roles? Yes. But the question is, why does it need to if real families exist this way? Especially because Pixar fought for it to be this way. Quotes, per Variety, the company protests, which also include a planned walkout of LGBTQ Disney employees, seem to have made an impact on Lightyear's final cut. The censored kiss between Hawthorne and her partner will now be reinstated into the film. For as much as the pearl clutching that I see about the topic, I have yet to see a pipeline that showcases the consequences of inclusion of real family makeups in children's media like Disney. By the way, isn't this the same company that for like half of their animated movies it ends in a big kiss scene? So by your logic, which is already my mistake here, when Disney movies end in a big kiss, that's okay to show to 6-year-old Sally, but if that same kiss scene was two women, it magically becomes sexual? So what, if it was two silhouettes of people kissing and you didn't know what the genders were? What is that, Schrodinger's sexuality? Like, this is so stupid. Not only this, but according to the tab, quote, lots of people are remembering that he was in 2 episodes of The L Word in 2004. The drama, which is mostly written and directed by queer women, is about the lives and relationships of a group of lesbians and bisexuals in Los Angeles. Snoop plays a fictional rapper called Slim Daddy, who shoots a music video with one of the main female characters called Kit Porter. At the time, Kit's sister is just beginning a relationship with her partner Tina, which goes on to be one of the show's biggest dating storylines. Post-editing Jay here, I wanted to make a quick addition to this video that I think is super important. As I was looking for cartoons that Snoop Dogg has appeared in, I came across this article here that talks about how Snoop Dogg made or endorsed in some type of way a children's show on YouTube called Doggyland. And the reason why this is important is because this cartoon was specifically made to represent diversity. Here's a quote from the article. You can just be you and be accepted in Doggyland. And that's what these characters represent, diversity. So kids can learn to love each other from the beginning because hate is what's taught. Love is what's in their heart. So for him, 3 years later, to not have this take and to not have this perspective says a lot. And I wanted to drop that bombshell in the middle of this video, but we can go back to the original video now.
And I don't even know the answer that's rehearsed. What am I supposed to say? What was the lady used to be I got questions. Now I got questions.
No, Snoop Dogg and Sarah Font note, Kiko is not canonically trans, but since you want to bring it up, Disney and by extension Pixar have had cold feet when it comes to rep recently. Between Disney pulling, or as they say, indefinitely withholding the Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur episode about Brooklyn because she's trans, or pulling the storyline with Kai within Win or Lose and removing any lines that reference gender identity there, or parading around the first non-binary character in elementary Elemental, when said character had several lines cut, is showing a pattern of cold feet. In fact, now thinking about it, Elio also had cut content, reportedly for being queer. Disney has been regressing in several ways, and the fact that they're scrambling to try and find out what Gen Z men may like is going to be a riot to see them try to figure out. We've made amazing strides in terms of inclusion in the 2010s and the early 2020s in terms of showcasing a lot of different identities and having a lot of stories that are fit for almost everyone. Even if you still don't like Lightyear, I would imagine most of you don't, I would imagine the reason for so didn't have to do with 15 seconds that barely impacted anything else. And that's also a big issue with me about this situation. The part of this that I truly don't get is that if Snoop watched the movie, he'd see how little impact that scene has on the whole movie. For him to paint his experience of the movie based on this question does a disservice to what Lightyear represents. I know it's not everyone's favorite movie, especially in the 2020s, but seeing Commander Hawthorne grow up without Buzz gets a little sad to see. You can see that she's still happy for Buzz and would have preferred if he was here to spend time with her and her upcoming family. You can see the guilt this gives Buzz for being so narrow-minded. If those scenes no longer work because of one character's gender, that says more about you than it does about the story. So remember when I said that Snoop didn't even know the name of the movie that he was going to speak about? What if I told you this man was a multitasking god and could somehow sleep and watch the movie at the exact same time? Because apparently that's what he did.
I was just there to go to sleep and watch the movie. That nigga woke me up. I'm in there. Huh? They just said that she had a baby. How? They both women's. Oh, man, damn. Yeah, eat this popcorn.
And we get to the crux of it. You didn't know what the movie was called, you didn't know who the characters were, you didn't know what the movie was about, you didn't know what the scene was in reference to, yet you've painted this to appear as if you were supporting Keke Palmer, which, by the way, great job, friend. Completely dismissing the entire movie 3 years later on an unknown podcast because of 15 seconds that she wasn't even in and openly admitting to sleeping throughout the whole thing. So much for wanting to watch the movie, huh? Did you even buy a ticket to get into the theater in the first place, or did you try to pay an exposure? The same morality of a person who, when criticized for getting into the world of crypto, decided to respond with love.
For all the hate, I'ma answer with love. Y'all can't hate enough on me. I love too much.
That love is immediately gone when the rapper who's supposed to be good with words couldn't think of a way to explain to a child that it's not impossible for a baby to have two mothers. And don't give me anything about this pregnancy. If it was Shrek 3 when Fiona was pregnant with triplets, do you think any of this would have come up? Exactly. So please, everyone, if you want a better example of actually decent parenting, check out this video about the Bluey episode that broke every parent.